Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to whatever time zone you're in. Thank you for tuning in to our webinar tonight at mine and Ridge Armory. Whatever time zone you're in is Toby Gross tuning in, and I will be your host for tonight's show. Hopefully we'll be able to bring you some good educational information. So, again, my name is Toby, and we'll jump into the content here in just a few minutes. But I want to give a couple of minutes for everybody to start rolling in and start joining. With a live webcast like this, you have to give everybody just a minute to start getting the notifications, to choose to join if they want to. Hopefully everybody set a reminder, and they'll be joining us tonight. So looks like we've already got a couple of viewers in here. By the way, if you're out there in YouTube, just for reference, I can see the numbers and the counts of people, but I don't know who you are. And I don't know unless you say hello or give us a comment and let us know you're out there. I won't know who you are and that you're out there. But whoever you are, thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Hopefully the content we'll be showing tonight will be something useful to you. A couple things since you've already stopped by. Obviously, while you're here, go ahead and like and subscribe and ring the bell down below. I appreciate any kind of support I can get. So that I can continue to bring you some content like this. Hopefully it's going to be something that'll be of value to you, some value-add content. I'll give it about another minute, and then we'll start jumping into the content. I'm going to go ahead and start pulling up some of our information. So we're going to start with a couple slides of a PowerPoint. But the PowerPoint is not going to be, I'm not going to bullet point you to death. It's just for me to have a couple of agenda points and to remember my train of thought and where I was heading with all this content that I was planning on helping you guys or sharing with you tonight. Tonight's topic is going to be data recovery and transmission in non-permissive environments. Basically, we're going to talk through some of the Tails live run operating system that you can run from a thumb drive, and we're going to focus on how you can use a thumb drive potentially if you're in a non-permissive environment or somewhere where you have to get data or communication out to the outside world, and you don't necessarily have the technology handy to be able to do so. In other words, you won't have your laptop or you won't have one of your computers or one of your devices handy, but you've got a live run operating system on a thumb drive. And so we're going to go over that subject tonight with a particular focus on instead of on the IT perspective from like a vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, those types of things. We're going to be focusing more along the avenue of executive protection agents and potentially military or law enforcement who could be, or contractors who could be in a non-permissive environment, and this information could potentially make or break whatever you're trying to do, whatever information you're trying to get out. So again, my name is Toby Gross. I appreciate all of you who are joining out there. Again, if you're watching this in replay, thank you so much for watching it replay. If you're watching it live, either way, do me a favor, again, subscribe, ring the bell, and get the notifications whenever content comes out. I'm going to go ahead and pop off some of these things off screen and start throwing up the PowerPoint. We're at about the 3 or 4 minute mark afterwards. And I'm going to go ahead and start rolling into the content because the first couple slides is just me introducing myself and giving you a little bit of information on what my background is. So with that in mind, you don't want to see me off to the side. Or maybe you do. Let's leave that up for the moment and just kind of see how this works out. So again, tonight's topic is going to be a spinoff and kind of a second to our webinar that we did last week. The webinar last week was about 2.5 hours. It was a little longer, and it was about open source intelligence gathering, using technology-based open source intelligence gathering. Again, specifically focused on the executive protection agents doing advanced work and potentially investigating malicious actors or people who could be causing issues for your principal or your client, that kind of thing. And that was pretty much the focus of the content we went through last week. It's available in replay on my YouTube channel if you want to go back and check it out and watch through. Like I said, it's about 2.5 hours. So it was a little beefy and it's pretty informative. I did a bunch of live demonstrations. I talked through a bunch of different topics, starting from a very high level and then working my way down into some detailed demonstrations. Again, And among those things, what I discussed, one of the things was the Tails operating, the Tails operating system and a live run on a live run thumb drive. And so I thought it might be beneficial to kind of show how that actually works and do a real world demonstration of that in real time on the internet. So, I'm sure nothing's going to go wrong. I'm sure this is going to go off perfectly and without a hitch. And I'm going to talk through all this stuff. I'm going to show you, and it's just going to be magic, right? So bear with me because I'm trying to produce this and share this content with you and everything all at once. So again, sure, nothing's going to go wrong. All right. So all that said, real quick. So who am I and what is Mining Ridge Armory? So my name is Toby Gross. I own a small security consulting business and firearms training business called Mining Ridge Armory. And that's miningridgearmory.com, as you saw in the lower thirds that I had pulled up just a minute ago with my name. I do some side work for another company called gearreport.com where we do gear reviews and that kind of thing. But primarily by day, I work as a project manager and a process manager for a Fortune 40 company in the information technology space, particularly in the information security space right now. I've got a grand total of about 34 years of IT experience. And I know a lot of you are thinking, well, computers haven't really been around that long. You're part right. The computers in their modern incarnation have not been around that long. But I started taking basic computer programming and typing in high school when I was 14 years old as a cool way to meet girls. You couldn't be on a wrestling team and go to home ec class. It was kind of frowned upon. That didn't work out for me, by the way, just so you know. But 34 years later, I'm still typing and I'm still doing some basic programming. About 2008 or 2009, and I've worked with computers in and around computers in different capacities all throughout my life for over 30 years. And then in about 2008, 2009, I decided to get some formalized training and start putting structure and documentation behind all of that computer skills that I had in the background. So I focused initially on the hard skills of being able to actually, take computers apart, remediate malware, build out, image computers, et cetera, install printers, networks, and so on. And I focused on getting a bunch of those training and certification. As the years passed, I saw the need to be able to focus more on obviously information security, but on the project and process management side of the house. So I started leaning more towards those types of trainings, including getting things such as my Project Management Institute ACP certification in project management, as well as several others, as you can see from the credentials there on the screen. From a physical security perspective, I've been in and around firearms since I came out of the womb, pretty much. It's a Southern way of life. You know how that goes around here. I have worked security for South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, Coastal International Security for some time when I was living in the Myrtle Beach area. And I've been, concealed carrying firearms pretty much as long as it's been legal for me to do so. Around, again, about the same time scale, 2009, 2010, I decided to formalize some of that training and become a certified concealed carry instructor in the state that I live in. So I started focusing on giving that same passion that I give to computers to the physical security space and starting to learn how physical security works in buildings, cameras, closed-circuit television, how the computer and IT world interacts with that, and then focusing on the hard skills again of firearms and firearms-related skills. Is anything from being an NRA training counselor at this point in almost every discipline that they offer, to all the way up to more advanced classes, such as CQB, vehicle tactics, two-man tactics, those kinds of things, high threat protection, some executive, actual official executive protection training. Formalized. And I've also, spent a great deal of time focusing on the mental aspects, as well as some of the non-firearms related training, such as situational awareness training. I'm a certified instructor for the SAFE training program, which is a civilian adaptation of the Marines Combat Hunter program, where it teaches you how to scientifically, using scientifically backed, data-driven ideologies and methodologies to apply to daily situations to identify threats before they happen. So I'm a certified instructor for that. And, spend a lot of time doing those kinds of trainings that are non-firearms related, the refuse to be a victim, training people on how to do basic, child safety, elder care, elder safety, site security, like we said, hardening, layered and hardening of your physical security for your home and that kind of thing. So I've been very passionate about IT and about physical security now for quite some time. It's actually been a grand total of about 11 or 12 years for formal. And like I said, over 30 years of actual, just kind of in the weeds, rough real world experience. Now, that said, I wanted to throw up a disclaimer. And that disclaimer is that everything we're going to be talking about tonight comes from more of a civilian aspect. While I may have a lot of those credentials and be an official licensed and insured trainer, I'm not law enforcement. I'm not military. I do not claim to have any kind of background like that. I have had, some formalized training in forensic data recovery, those kinds of things, vulnerability assessment, penetration research, those kinds of things, but not from a formal legal perspective. So everything I'm telling you tonight comes from more of a real world in the trenches view of, I just know this is how the computers work. I know this is how this stuff all joins together and fits together in the big picture, and how you, the audience, could actually potentially use this to benefit you or to help to achieve whatever your particular scope of mission is, whether it's to protect the client and a principal, or whether it's that you're, again, stuck behind the line in a non-permissive environment and you've just absolutely got to get some type of communication or data out to the outside world. Non-permissive could also actually mean, not just, state-sponsored actors or state-sponsored areas of the continent or of the world that you're in. It could mean, that you're just, you're in a place of business where you're not allowed to be able to access the computers for whatever reason. And again, as far as the disclaimer goes, all the information I'm going to teach you tonight needs to be used in a moral and above board and legal fashion, in accordance with the laws and the policies of wherever you are. So whatever country you're in, whatever building you're in, whatever business you are, and whatever business you're representing. So nothing I tell you tonight should be used maliciously. So where I was going with that comment before that is to say, say, for example, you're in a business that doesn't allow you to use their computers for personal use, but for whatever reason, that there's an emergency, there's a riot, there's a state of panic or something's going on outside, and you just absolutely got to do what you got to do. Similar in nature to ham radios. Normally you can't use a ham radio, but in a state of emergency, they kind of turn the other eye and wink, wink, because, you got to do what you got to do to survive. Okay. So that disclaimer out of the way, let's jump into some of the content here. So what is Tails? Tails, and I'll pull up the website here. I won't talk much. Like I said, I've literally only got like a couple more slides, if that, and a couple of those are questions and identification of me. So pretty much only like 2 or 3 slides where we actually talk through some bullet points. So bear with me for a second, and then we'll jump out and we'll look at the Tails website, and then we'll do an actual live demonstration. I'll pull the camera down and point it over here at a couple laptops we got, and we'll walk through some stuff. So what is Tails? Tails is the Total Amnesic Incognito Live System. It is a thumb drive. You can install it as an operating system. It is a Linux-based, live run, thumb drive installed, full-blown operating system. Okay. Now, where it specializes is there are many superior forms of Linux that you can run on a thumb drive with no problems. Where Tails excels is that the end user who doesn't have the technical knowledge to be able to do things like breadcrumb removal, forensic removal of their tracks and traces when they went inside of an operating system, the ability to identify the MAC address of the computer and to mask that to the outside world, the ability to be able to have some of those skills to hide yourself or obfuscate your identity on the way in and on the way out. If you don't have those skills at a very high level, then you may potentially make a mistake as you're doing some of the things we're going to talk through tonight, leave behind a little bit of a trail, and that could end up getting you in some hot water. So where Tails excels is it kind of takes a lot of that thought process out of that for you. It kind of does everything for you. Like, for example, when you're launching it, it immediately gives you the option to, hey, do you want to spoof your MAC address? Do you want to forget everything that we're doing, or do you want to save everything that we're doing? Do you want to have an administrative password or not? Those kinds of things. It stops and does that for you. And again, we'll show it here in just a minute so that you'll kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. So it kind of brings that level of expertise down about 12 notches. It's still Linux-based. There's still that element to it. There's still 1,000 things you need to know, with regards to obfuscation, with regards to the particular piece of equipment, hardware, computer, whatever you're getting ready to touch and stick that thumb drive into. There's 100 little bullet points you need to know. And I strongly suggest you research all of them, including watching my open source intelligence gathering video that I put out on my YouTube channel last week. But it kind of lowers the bar of entry for you to be able to get started and kind of get out of the gates and get going into the realm of where you need to go. So Tails really excels in that, in giving you that ability. So a couple bullet points about Tails. So I'll jump to a slightly bigger picture of me here so I can show you something. So I want to talk about the thumb drive. So you need to use a really good quality thumb drive. Now, good quality thumb drive can mean a bunch of different things to a bunch of people, okay? So a good quality thumb drive, like this one, that's military grade, shock resistant, waterproof. You can see it's got a couple years of wear. That's a beast, and that thing has a really good rating as far as read write and longevity of use and that kind of thing. But it's huge. I mean, if by chance I had to hide that somewhere on my person for whatever reason, on my belt, in my shoe, in an orifice, that's not exactly tiny. Okay. And if you use a cheap quality one, you run the risk of it not working when you need it, or perspiration from your body from wherever you've got it in your pocket or wherever it is that you're carrying the thing. You run the risk of it not operating and not working when you need. So what I tend to suggest to people is get kind of the smallest form factor you can get. And I'm not doing an advertisement for Kingston here, by the way, but I will say that this little Kingston, I think this one's a 64-bit. I've had that in and out of my pocket for many, many years and used it with a Tails operating system on it for a really, really long time. And it hasn't failed me. And I mean, perspiration gets down inside of the blades there. It's a USB 3.0. It's got the little blue stripe on it. It's 3.0 instead of 2.0 or the original 1.1, I think it was. But my point is, be sure you spend a couple dollars. Don't go crazy, but spend a couple dollars to go ahead and get something that you can trust. And have a backup. Once you've got this thing set up the way you want it, make sure you've got a clone of it so that you've got something to go back to and restore in the event that something goes south. Which, by the way, we will talk through when we put up the website about it updating and about how to install it and all that good stuff. Okay. So another couple bullet points to think about is make sure it's small and disposable. Not just the smaller part, but again, back to the whole spending a lot of money. Can you drop it if you need to? If the opportunity arises, or something goes wrong, or something goes left to center, can you drop the thing and get rid of it if you need to? Persistent storage. We're going to talk about that as all throughout this whole demonstration. So when you're setting up Tails, and again, I'm not going to show you how to set up Tails. I will show you where to go to do so. And of course, Google is your friend and YouTube is your friend. We're not going to talk through any of that or do a demonstration of that. But when you're setting it up, be sure that if you intend to retain data on the thumb drive itself, for whatever reason, whether it's a password, encrypted password files that you're using, whether you're going to be pulling in and out documents that you need to drag in and out for whatever reason, and again, making sure they're encrypted. If you plan on keeping and retaining information, then you need to be able to you need to be sure you set up persistent storage and that you encrypt the drive. Now, again, going back to whole drive versus file level encryption that you can see or that you can listen to me talk about in the demonstration we did last week, you want to make sure that the whole thumb drive is encrypted and that you have persistent storage set up on it. If you plan on having retained data in it. If you do not, then it doesn't matter. You can set it up by default without persistent storage. And then it's literally just a toss away. You use it to do whatever communication you need to do, and you chunk it because there was nothing on there that even the best of the best could crack into because there was nothing there. But remember, persistence, it's by nature, it's called the amnesic incognito live system for a reason. It forgets itself every time you reboot the computer. Whatever is on that thing, except for the base operating system and the base functionality, is gone. Unless you set up persistence. And if you set up persistence, be sure that you set it up encrypted with a super extra strong password. And I'm talking like 20 some characters, uppercase, lowercase, and symbols. Don't go soft on this one. Okay. Passphrase. Think passphrase. Okay. Like I love puppy dogs, using a less than 3 for the love, and the capital I and the capital L and the capital P or whatever. Okay. We talked about password protect, so we hit that point already. All right, moving on. Some points that you're going to need to remember as we talk through and I do the live demonstration. And this is one of those hard skills that you either got to learn ahead of time, or you've got to Google and YouTube on the fly when the situation presents itself. These are the types of things that I can't teach you because there's literally 500 different ways or 1,000 different ways or whatever. These are kind of some of the things, though, that are going to affect the quality of result that you get. For example, each computer type will boot differently. When you very first press the power button on older school computers, you'd see a splash screen that popped up, and it's going to say HP or Dell or whatever the case may be. And at the bottom in fine print, you're going to see a list of mumbo jumbo that's going to be explaining to you how to do those initial boot options. So, for example, it could be hit the delete button to go into BIOS, or hit F1 or F10 or whatever the key sequence is that particular brand uses to get into BIOS. Now, there's going to be BIOS options, and we're going to show that. And there's going to be, on some computers, quick boot options. And you need to be aware that both of those may or may not be password protected, according to how the policy of the computer or the back-end BIOS is set up. So quickly, without going too into the weeds of that, because, again, I'm going to do a demonstration of it. The BIOS is the basic input-output system that lies up underneath the operating system, up underneath Windows 10 or Mac OS X or whatever, that's in between the hardware and the computer itself. It is basically a hardware, it's a firmware, effectively, that controls the hardware inside the motherboard itself. And it is the basic input-output system. It's nothing to be scared of unless you make an incorrect change. But if you go in and make a change in there, you need to remember, in order to footprint yourself or to not leave a footprint of yourself, you got to go back in and change that back. And we'll go through that. You're better off to be able to get a quick boot option if that's available to you. And we'll demonstrate that as well. Now, again, this is the kind of thing you have to research ahead of time. Does this company use HP computers? Do they use Dell-based computers? Do they use Lenovo-based computers? And then you're going to want to research ahead of time, what that particular boot sequence or that necessity to get into that USB drive will be. On the fly, like I said, a lot of times you can pull up the boot screen, the splash screen, and you can get the information you need there. A lot of times. If not, you're gonna have to rely on your phone if you have a phone available to you, or doing good advanced work to where you knew all this stuff ahead of time. You're gonna have to rely on your skills to know that. Now, just a word of warning. Again, your results may vary. USB could be disabled. There are a lot of companies out there who are aware today, because of keyloggers and malicious data extraction and those kinds of things, that they're disabling the USB ports by either policy or going into the BIOS and disabling them and then protecting them with a password. Many companies do not allow you to read right to a USB, therefore they just got them turned off. You're going to have to bear in mind that file level versus disk level encryption, and again, you can go back and watch my video to talk about that, will impact the results that you're going to get. And what I mean by that is, if your intent is to attach a thumb drive to a computer and go in and extract data from that computer, if it is a whole drive encrypted computer, the whole hard drive is encrypted, it's not going to work. All you're going to see is just a block of data that the thumb drive can't read. If your intention is to go in and extract a single piece of data, and it is only encrypted at the file or folder level, then you will be able to extract that data. In many cases, you will be able to extract that data, put it onto your persistent thumb drive, and take it home with you to do whatever it is you're intending to do with it. If your intent is just to use the computer as a point of egress for data or information or email or whatever, then it's a moot point. It doesn't matter whether you have file level or disk level encryption. It's completely irrelevant. You'll be able to plug this thumb drive into any computer that the USB is not disabled on, and you'll be able to get communications out, get out to the internet, to be able to do that kind of thing, regardless of what the hard drive is. So the hard drive encryption, basically whole level hard drive encryption, only really applies for data extraction from the host computer. So the file types will impact the results. So file system types. So what I mean by that is this is a Linux operating system, right? So it natively reads Linux really well. It's not quite as good at reading Unix-based operating systems, so Mac OS X. Pretty good at Windows-based operating systems, although NTFS is a little sketchier for it. So you need to understand that whatever you're attaching to, Chromebook, that kind of thing, your results are going to vary according to what you're trying to do, again, with regards to exploration or data extraction from the computer that you're attaching to. It's going to vary based on the file system and type that it's using, okay? Network connectivity is key to your success on no matter what you're going to do. So, in other words, once I've attached to a host computer and I've got the live operating system up and running, then me being able to connect to the outside world, the internet, is going to be key, and there's going to be some steps that you'll have to take and some things you need to be aware of in relation to VPN, Tor, again, breadcrumbing, leaving prints of yourself, as well as leaving prints out there to the outside world, to internet service providers and that kind of thing. We're going to have to talk a little bit about identity obfuscation. We spent a great deal of time talking about that in my demonstration last week in my webinar. So we'll just kind of touch on it and how it matters, because again, once I'm in there, I don't want you to know. Obviously, if you're coming in with a live run operating system, there's a reason you don't want people to know that you're in there and what you're doing. So identity obfuscation is very important. And again, this doesn't have to be malicious by any stretch of the imagination. There's no reason to assume that identity obfuscation and the dark web and VPN and Tor are because you're some kind of bad guy. That is not the case. There are use cases, thousands of use cases we can sit here and talk through as to why you would want to do that. So let me pause for a second. Oh, looks like I've got a bunch of people out here talking, and I apologize I haven't acknowledged y'all. So got Gun Loving Grandpa out there, and Jay and May, Jefferson Martial Arts. Appreciate you guys stopping in. It's good to see both of y'all. Thank you so much, and I apologize it took me so long to acknowledge y'all were out there. I get on a roll and trying to do all this at the same time, I forget it. But thanks for joining. Stick with me. This one won't be anywhere near as long as the last. 2.5 hours on this one. This one will probably keep to try to keep to around an hour, something like that. Unless you guys ask me a ton of questions. And by the way, post up questions. I will try to answer them live and in real time. If you're watching this in replay, post them up in the comments below. And again, like, subscribe, ring the bell, that kind of thing. Like or dislike, thumbs up, thumb down. I'm okay with that. Any kind of organic interaction. I'll try to get back to you with an answer if I know the answer. If I don't, I'll try to get you some information from somebody who does. All right. So again, we're also going to talk about the dark web, VPN, and Tor just real quickly. And we're going to talk about once you've extracted that data, or once you've got that file on your persistent thumb drive, how you want to send that out from an encrypted standpoint to the outside world. All right. And with that, I'm going to get out of the PowerPoint of death, and we're going to start doing some demo work. All right. So let's jump out of there. Oh, that was not what I wanted to do, but we'll put that down here. Okay. Now, for those of you who get seasick, I'm going to warn you right now that I'm going to be moving this camera. So now would be a great time to turn away if you get seasick. Okay? For just a second. All right. See if I can get some light going here too. Let's see what's going on. There we go. All right. Now, I want to do just a quick shout out and just a quick demo of a MacBook, because MacBook is kind of its own animal. Again, I've got a couple thumb drives here with the Tails operating system in it, and this is just an older MacBook. It's nothing new, nothing fancy, just a regular old plain Jane. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick you're going to take your thumb drive and you're going to find a hole to stick it in. That just sounds gross, doesn't it? And so this is what we talked about every computer kind of boots up slightly differently. Let me get a good camera angle here. Hopefully that glare from that light's not too much on everybody right here at the top. If it does, then let's turn it down a little bit. While the screen gets some of them skanky fingerprints off there. All right. The joys of doing things live. All right. So so let's say I've walked up to this computer, okay, and there's a Mac sitting there, and what my use case is that I need to, it's locked. The computer's locked. I can't get into it because it's not my computer. I'm at a coffee shop in, I don't know, Mumbai or something, and I've got to get an email out to my company because my client has changed his travel plans, and the advance work that we had done for the hotels is not going to work because all of a sudden he has changed his mind and he's decided to move to a different tourism spot. He's decided to go and do something different, just to give you an example of a scenario. And let's say that, they had taken most of my devices in my computer, or I left my computer behind, or I just don't have it, or whatever. We stopped in a coffee shop on the way, and I know, hey, I got a second here. I need to get that information out, and I need to get out ASA yesterday. So you can walk over to the computer, and if it's powered on, that's no big deal. You can press and hold the power button. And again, this is a Mac. Press and hold the power button until it turns off all the way. Press and hold till it powers off. Then what you're going to do is, insert your thumb drive. You're going to press the power button, and you're going to hold the option. As soon as you hear the sound, you're going to hold the option button. And sometimes you have to do this a couple of times, so bear with me. You hold down the option button until you see that it gives you a couple of boot options, right? So I can boot to what's called an EFI boot, which is what's on that thumb drive, or I can boot to the native hard drive. So you hit your little arrow or whatever. So I'm going to pick that, and it will boot me right straight into my live run operating system, Tails. It pulls the Grub bootloader up. You can see there that the Tails operating system, and then it's going to boot right on into it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and boot this up and then shut it back down, and then we'll use a Windows-based computer because that is the most common computer that you're going to run into. I just want to show you this from a Mac perspective just to show you that it does work and kind of give you a demonstration of that whole every computer boots a little differently. And again, what I did was I just hit the power button, and as soon as I heard the sound, I pressed and held the option button there until it gave me the boot order option of what I wanted to boot into. Do I want to boot to the hard drive, or do I want to boot to whatever else you got plugged in here? All right. And now another thing to note, since you're running a 100% operating system off of a thumb drive, then its performance and speed is going to be purely dependent on the quality of the thumb drive that you have, and whether it's USB 2.0, 3.0, and the quality and newness of the computer that you're running it on. So I won't get into the demonstrations here where we talk about some of the things that I just mentioned about being able to encrypt and setting a password and persistence and all that kind of stuff. What I'm going to do instead is go ahead and jump out of here, and we'll go over that when we get into a Windows PC. But you can see I'm already at the step where we're getting ready to jump into a full live run operating system. And that this is a Mac, and that is a Linux operating system. Okay. So we're going to just power it off. Now, you'll notice that as it's powering off, as it's leaving, it's going to be running a bunch of processes in the background. It didn't show it. You can see it better on a Windows-based computer. It's running a bunch of processes in the background to delete its own tracks on the way out, to say, hey, I wasn't here. You didn't see me. You didn't see nothing. Nothing to see here. Look the other way. Okay. Now, this is a Windows-based computer. This particular one is a Lenovo. So I'm going to find a hole in the back of it. Lenovo does have a beautiful quick boot option where you can boot to a couple different. You can do something similar to what you can do to a Mac, but I'm going to start by showing you how to get into the BIOS on a computer. And in this case, the splash screen doesn't tell me hit delete or hit F1 or hit F10 or whatever to get into the BIOS. This one you have to hit F1, and I just know that. And I know that as soon as you see it start showing the splash screen, the company splash screen, I can hit F1 one time. It'll give me the option to go into boot. And that's just because I know the Lenovo products, right? That's where I did my homework and did my research ahead of time. So let's stack this up here a little higher. Again, sorry for those of you who get seasick. I do apologize, but there's no real other way for me to do this camera work, I don't think. Not with the equipment, everything I'm using. So I press the power button. And again, say I've walked up to a hotel. All right, see, I wait for it to say that. I hit F1. It's going to go into BIOS. Now,
Let's say, again, same scenario. They've decided to change plans. I'm down in the lobby of the hotel. Okay. And the hotel is, there's a computer there in the lobby. It's a desktop computer. It's attached. They got it off in a little side room like most hotels do in the lobby. And I've got to to jump onto that computer and, get some data out. I got to get an email out. I got to get, the new curriculum out to, or the new agenda back to headquarters because, again, my client or my principal has decided to change his travel plans, whatever. So literally I walk up to the computer, say the computer's still turned on, and that you don't have the guest account, or let's say even the guest account's logged in, but you want to identity obfuscate. You don't want to get into their system using their passwords, their unclean internet, their unclean data, who you don't know whether they're key logging or capturing. You don't know what they're doing. Right? You don't want to use theirs. You want to use your thumb drive. It doesn't have to be a malicious intent. It can be, purely a good intent. So again, you can either hard boot the computer by pressing and hold the power button, or if it's already off, you can insert the thumb drive into a port and then power it up. Now, from there, like I said, there's going to be two options. Some companies and some computers have a quick boot option, which I'll show you here in just a second. But sometimes you're going to have to go into the BIOS and do this. Let me change the lights real quick. See if that gets rid of the glare a little better. There we go. So don't let the BIOS scare you, okay? You can get in here and totally mess things up. You can absolutely brick a computer in here, okay? Right after I tell you, don't be scared. But the key is this. No matter what changes you make, if you don't save and exit, if you just exit, or if you just hit the power button and jump out of it, or hit Control-Alt-Delete or whatever and jump back out of it, then any changes you made will not be written to the computer. Okay. Now, I want to caveat that if you do this method of booting to a computer, it is going to increase the amount of time that you're in there. It's going to increase the amount of time and potential for footprint, because you're going to have to go in and make this change in BIOS. You're going to have to boot into the computer then via the thumb drive, do what you need to do. Then you're going to have to shut down, let it delete its own tracks. The Tails operating system delete its own tracks as it's on the way out. And then you're going to have to go back into BIOS and change, remember what settings you changed, and then go back in and change them again. Now, another word of advice is, like I mentioned, sometimes BIOSes are password protected, in which case you're out of luck. If it's password protected and you don't have the password, you are not going to get in. That's just the bottom line. Now, and again, you can see here, I can exit without saving instead of just hitting escape or Control-Delete. There's a lot of ways to get out without saving the changes. Now, inside the BIOS, you just navigate with, and UEFI is also very similar, although UEFI has the ability to use your mouse. But you're going to just arrow over, you're going to use enter, that kind of thing. Obviously, we're looking for the startup, and different BIOSes by different companies are going to be a different layout. But on one of the tabs, whether it's general or startup or boot config or whatever, somewhere there's going to be a boot or boot order option. You're going to hit enter, and then you're going to tell it what order you want to boot in. Okay. Now you can see that my Kingston is all the way down here at 9. So it's not even going to try, no matter what I do, to boot to that. It's going to boot first to the hard drive. Then it's going to boot to look for a CD. If that's not there, then all this other stuff before it gets down to mine. That's your PCI slot or your LAN, your network cable. So what I would have to do is, as you can see down here, you got a plus or minus to move them up or down, right? So I'm going to do that. I'm not going to write this to memory because we're going to do the quick boot, but you can see that if I wanted to move that to top, I would move it all the way up here. Okay. Remembering that it originally was in 9, because that means that USB port was set to 9. I would then save and write this file. And then as I reboot this next time, as it reboots, it's going to boot to that first, which was my thumb drive. That's the thumb drive that I'm using. Okay. Then I would have to, after everything was done, I came back out, I would have to go back into BIOS, put that back where it was at originally. Okay. Which I'm going to go ahead and do because I don't care. Because we're going to do something different on this one. All right. So that's BIOS. Hopefully I covered everything. If there's any questions, pop them up in the comments or in the comments below, and I'll get back to you. And again, there's 1,000 videos out there about BIOS and pretty much every different computer, every different company, there's going to be a video for how to operate inside the BIOS on it. All right, but what we're going to do is the Lenovo series of laptops has the ability for you to hit F12 at that same screen, and it will give you a quick boot option. So we're going to do that just like we did with the Mac, something similar. Now, when I see my splash screen for this particular model, I'm just going to hit F12. Okay, and you hear it beep, and it says entering boot menu. Now it's going to give me the ability to quick boot and say, all right, we see this stuff right here is attached somehow. You know, we see if there's a network cable, we see if there's a thumb drive, we see if there's a hard drive. What are you wanting to do? What are you trying to do? So we're going to pick the Kingston Data Traveler, obviously, to get into Tails. Again, same boot screen. You see that it gives me the option to do Tails or Tails in troubleshooting mode. If you don't hit enter, it automatically boots on up into the operating system. Now, if you can see this, watch some of that loading. Well, it didn't show it there. Okay. Again, sorry for those of you who get seasick. I apologize about that. I know this is kind of painful for you to have to sit through me doing all this weird stuff, and I do sincerely apologize, but I don't see any better way to do this. All right. Now, this time we're going to talk about some of the options once you very first boot into it, instead of just blazing through and getting, punching on through. All right. So obviously, hopefully that's focused in pretty good on you. I'll zoom in on some of it here in a minute. Obviously, you got language options. You can change your language and you can change your keyboard layout, and that's just fine. But I'm not worried so much about that. Now, I do have encrypted persistent storage on this particular one. So I'm going to turn the camera away for a second so you're not looking over my shoulder while I type in passwords. And you can see that it's unlocking that persistent storage. So it says encrypted persistent storage. It's unlocked, and it will remain unlocked. All of the storage on that thumb drive will remain unlocked until the next time that I reboot. Okay. Now, there's the ability to do additional settings, and we are going to go in there because I want you to see some of this. Now, administrator password is off by default, and the reason that is off is, so in other words, you cannot go in here and install software. You cannot go in here and change permissions to the thumb drive or anything like that because you do not have the administrative capability to do so. And that's because 9 times out of 10, you're going to be using this just live and on the fly to do network connectivity or to get data in or out, okay, from a host machine. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to add us a password, okay, just this time. And it doesn't matter. You're doing it every time. So I'm just going to do Tails because it'll be different next time that I set it up. So it's not like that's not a permanent password. It just, they ask you for a new password every single time. And for this session, that will be your new password. Now, another thing, notice that MAC address spoofing is on by default. And we talked about that. And again, I go more into detail about what a MAC address is and why that's important in my webinar that I did last week. And it's going to be a direct network connection. You can actually change that if you need to for proxy. Like if you're really, really good and you've really got the technical background, you can set that up for proxy connections right out the gate to where it goes straight on through some ninja hidden networks you've got going on. Okay. So we're just going to start it with that. I'm going to decrypt my persistent storage, and we're going to start it with a basic cruddy password for administrative use. And again, now bear in mind, this is running 100% off of a thumb drive. So the speed and performance is going to be what it is, right? Now, first thing you'll notice is a little onion up here. Okay, this onion is saying whether or not it's connected to the Tor network. Right now, you can see that it's synchronizing the system clock. This thing is actually directly connecting hardwired to my system. So it's going on out to the world. And you can see now that the onion just went from an X to a full-blown little onion symbol, where it's connecting directly to the Tor network. And again, we go over the differences between Tor, dark web, and VPN, when you should and should not use each one of them in the webinar we went through last week. And it gets pretty verbose. But so now this thing is connected to the outside world. It has pulled a time based on a time zone server that it is pulling from. And now you can see that Tor is ready and that you can actually access the internet you want to. Now, I'm spending a great deal of time talking about that for two reasons. Number one is because, again, you need to understand what the difference between dark web, Tor, VPN, and how that works and how it matters tremendously for what you're trying to do and for identity obfuscation. Okay, it matters a lot. You really need to understand that fully and wholeheartedly. Quick, dirty version, though, is if you're just going to be popping in here, moving data around a little bit here or there, and then shooting out an email from an already secure email site, an already secure burner identity, that kind of thing, then bing, bang, boom, Bob's your uncle. You're good to go. You can go ahead and go straight on into the applications, and you can open Tor browser, okay, and just go, right? And now that it's connected to Tor. Now, the other reason I'm mentioning it, and the other reason you need to understand that it's very important, is because let's say that I'm at let's say that I'm at that same hotel scenario that we just talked about. We all know that very often there's a walled garden or an authentication page or a splash screen that you have to authenticate with before you can get to the outside world and the outside internet. Now, so when you first pull this up, that onion is going to just sit there and have an X on it and just sit there and chug away and chug away and chug away, and it's not going to connect. You will not be able to get on the internet. A lot of times what you'll have to do is, and that's why they know that and they built this in here, you'll have to go to your internet. You'll have to launch an unsafe browser, okay? An unsafe browser the first time. You have to pick your network. You have to use your if there's a wireless network, you'll have to pick your network, okay? Connect to it over here from the network drop down. Make sure that's connected before either will work, the onion or whatever. So I'm sorry about that. I skipped that step because, you know, I was already connected hardwired, but you're going to have to connect to the Wi-Fi network. If it doesn't hit the onion and there's potentially a splash screen at the location you're at, then you're going to have to go to Internet Unsafe Browser. You're going to have to launch that unsafe browser, which can be identified. It can be fingerprinted. Somebody's going to know you're there in one way, shape, form, or fashion if they're watching. You're going to have to pop that open, let Tails do its thing, and see that splash screen, that authentication screen. You're going to have to authenticate, you know, yes, I agree to your terms, McDonald's. And then you're going to have to close that unsafe browser out and watch for notifications up at the top. It will tell you once it has shut itself down to the point that it is now safe, that unsafe browser is back safe again, okay? And then you'll close that unsafe browser, get rid of it. Again, you'll watch for the onion to turn solid. You'll watch for it to tell you, hey, Tor browsing is engaged and you're good. Excuse me. Then, you know, just as a rule of thumb, it launches automatically to bomb.org. And by the way, we'll go ahead and come right back to this page here in a minute and talk through some of the features of tails.bomb.org before we close out of this thing, because that is the demonstration I was going to tell you for how to install it. But you can hit Torchic, you know, just check, let me know. Hey, am I on it? And it says your IP address is that, okay, which tells you immediately, where you're coming from. And I can tell you that my IP address physically here at this house is not that. So that tells me it's bouncing somewhere out on the Tor, on the Onion network, and my identity is at least relatively obfuscated. And again, we talked about in depth in my last video that we did last week about how to truly obfuscate. Okay. All right. So I'm going to pause there for a second, and we'll come back to being able to talk through how to set up Tor and how to burn your thumb drive or create your thumb drive, how to download the image and all that here in a minute using this homepage that they have. But I wanted to go through one more demo because we're already coming up on the hour. I've only got about 12 minutes. So I want to do one more demo of how to do data extraction from the host system in case you're wanting to send that out, or you're wanting to recover data and then send it out. And then we'll talk through, what to do with it. So what you do basically is, again, so let's say I've attached to this host system. Let's say a friend of mine is having, they've got a virus. Okay. Let's say the same hotel that you're staying in somehow infected your client's computer with a virus, that he's picked up malware, and every time he tries to boot his computer, it's coming up to a screen and it won't let him get in. It won't let him log in. But he's got to have that one PowerPoint file for that multi-million-dollar deal he's getting ready to do. All right. Well, this is a great example of this. If the host operating system is not encrypted at the whole drive level, you can go, you can go, trying to get this thing do what I want to do. Come on, there we go. You can go directly into the file system. And now for starters, there's the persistent storage, like we talked about a minute ago. That's where anything that I save from session to session to session to session is in here, in a persistent, and it will always be here, and it's encrypted. But I can go here, and then I can go to other locations, and you see there is the main hard drive for the host system of where this thumb drive is connected. So remember, I gave it a password ahead of time. We talked about that. This is an admin level action that you need to be able to do for it to attach to a host system and start pulling or removing data. You're going to have to give it an admin right. All right. So then all I got to do is just navigate down through the file folders to get to where his file is at that he's looking for. Now, a side note is you can't drag files from out here into that, because the file sizes are different, not natively with Tails. You have to do a little magic to get it to work. Let me caveat that. Okay, so I'm gonna navigate down. We got users, and then I think that one was user, and then let's say he was wanting this image file. Okay, so that image file, we're gonna copy it, and this is the same image file we used in our demonstration last week. Okay. And that image file was one we used to talk about, geolocation, geotagging, and metadata on files that you may need to, again, obfuscate, so that somebody can't get information off of your files. But that's the same one. It's an AR10 bolt group from where we're doing a review of the DSP Armory Titan AR10 for gear-report.com. But let's say that's the file that he wanted, right? So he's going to be demoing that for a client. I literally just copied and pasted that thing, literally just copied and pasted it from the host operating system over into the persistent drive. And there it is. All right. Now I got to get it out of here, right? So do I take that thumb drive and boot up into the next computer at the place that he's going, or what do I do? Well, one way is to email it, obviously, but you don't want to just email things. So again, take some time to go back to watch the video that I did last week, but something like send.firefox.com, where you can send, you can encrypt a file and send it, and then set it with time bound. You can set it time bound to where it'll delete, and that, for starters, it's encrypted, and only you and the person on the receiving end with the password will be able to decrypt it. But regardless, it also is time bound, and it deletes and it bleaches after whatever time you set it for. So a service like this, or like TrueCrypt, or like just leaving it on the persistent drive, plugging it into the next computer, booting up, and then getting it over. But now again, bear in mind, dragging it from this to the host operating system is a different ball game, and something you have to do a little research on. So the best way is either leave it there and then deal with it when you get back home, either by doing things like removing the metadata from it, decrypting it using rainbow tables or whatever brute force mechanism that you're wanting to decrypt an encrypted file, that kind of thing, or just send it, right? Send it over the internet, right? Now, we're coming up on the top of the hour, and I don't want to go on for 2 or 3 hours on this one. So we're going to talk through one more thing, and then we're going to probably call it a night after that. So this basically gives you the basic overviews of how to boot into a computer with the Tails Live Run operating system, the ability to pull and extract data from that host system, provided you have the correct criterion inside the environment to be able to do so. And most importantly is how to communicate to the outside world. So natively, it comes with all your Office programs to be able to do editing of Office documents. It comes with email clients, private browsers. It comes with the ability to do onion circuits, Bitcoin, and to be able to transact digital or cryptocurrency, those kinds of things. It comes with all the basic stuff that you need, sound and video editing, sound recording, the ability to boot into a host operating system, a host computer that's in the hotel you're at, set it to privately record over in the background. Nobody knows it's even happening. Those kinds of things. Okay. So I'm not going to go in depth on all that. Again, there's 100 videos out there on the internet, and that's not what I was wanting to focus on tonight. What I was wanting to focus on was you operating in a non-permissive environment, and you've got to either extract and send data, or you've got to communicate to the outside world, and you don't have a computer readily available, or you want to obfuscate your identity and not use your computer and use a different host computer that's available to you publicly or open source. open source being the keyword. And again, check out my open source video last week for a lot more details on this. So last point before we round it up and roll it up, before we sweep the floors and close the doors, is how to actually get the operating system to go to begin with. So you'll go to tails.baum.org, B-O-U-M, Baum, whatever. That's where Tails lives, okay? Now, you can go in and you can download it directly. You can listen to the news, see what they've got going on, and so on and so on and so on. Direct downloads right here, USB images, BitTorrent, the ability to download it as a torrent file, and so on and so on and so on. Okay. Now, there's also directions right here down here. Okay, from Mac OS X, Windows, if you're going to install it to a thumb drive based on those two operating systems. And more importantly, up here, there's a bunch of different documentation. Okay, and there's tons of YouTube videos. There's always somebody out there telling you how to do this stuff. The about page, warnings, downloading and verifying, what's user documentation, how to do it, system requirements, warnings, how do you use it, how to download, install, and upgrade. Upgrade is a thing too. So this thing will natively check for updates every single time you launch it. And that's great. But when it comes to, that's usually your minor releases, like 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. When it gets to 5.0, a lot of times you're going to have to blast the image and download a fresh image and go through a process of migrating your persistent data from one to the other. So that comes back to what we talked about having one cloned of it at all times. You'll end up upgrading one, not the one that has your persistent data on it, but your spare, and then you'll clone the two over together, and it talks you through all that. But basically speaking, there's very good documentation with pictures for anything that you're wanting to do. And again, tons of directions and videos out on the internet. Okay. All right. So I think that pretty much covers most of the Tails operating system. I'm going to shut it down just so you can see what it does on the way out, like we talked about. So I've extracted that file, and that means that file now, that PowerPoint file from my boss, is going home with me, right? Because I put it on my thumb drive. If I can get that thing in my shoe and get it home. Now, you didn't see it again. I hate that it's not showing that. I really do. On a lot of computers, you can see it stepping off the steps as it's obfuscating its identity and erasing its own breadcrumbs trails as it's booting or as it's shutting itself down. I wish you could have seen that, but apparently it doesn't do it on this computer and on the latest release. But it is obfuscating and deleting its own identity on the way out. All right. Okay. Again, sorry for the seasick nature there. So that's it, guys. So that is just in a nutshell, a real quick down and dirty look at being able to extract data and communicate to the outside world using a live run thumb drive, just a little old thumb drive or a little micro SD card. Or micro SD cards, by the way, is questionable. You got to be sure that the computer you're going to be connecting to will have a micro SD slot. Almost all computers, all the way back to Windows XP and beyond, have a USB port. That's a quick down and dirty of how to be able to get your data, to extract data and to be able to communicate to the outside world from a host system using a Tails live run operating system. Again, thank you for joining in. Hopefully this information has been helpful to some of you professionals out there in the executive protection industry. If you have any questions, leave them below. I will come back and check on this video periodically. While you're there, go ahead and hit that thumbs up, thumbs down, subscribe, and ring the bell. You can check out all of our content and follow Mining Ridge Armory at miningridgearmory.com. Or, of course, we have a Facebook page where you can like Mining Ridge Armory. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty much on most all social media sites, but LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube are the ones that I'm the most active on. If you have any kind of needs for supplemental training or specific targeted training in any of the areas of that we provide, security consultation for sites, internet or information security, situational awareness training, firearms or hard skill training, both initial or more advanced trainings. If you have any more targeted, specific information technology training, like some of the more advanced stuff that say Kali Linux or Tails operating system can do for you and for your business, and ways that you can use it in the real world, reach out to me. You can contact me directly via the website, direct message on Facebook, YouTube, whatever. Just reach out. Thank
Thank you for stopping by. Until we see you out on the range, you keep living your dream.